You know, we've got the likes of Jasmine Paris, Nikki Spinks, Beth Pascal, and my next guest is no different to amazing. You know, she's running jungles, deserts, ice. She's won races. She's a multiple world record holder. She's doubled races, so she run the race and then run back. It's absolutely mad. Her running CV is immense. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I give you the marvelous Mimi Anderson. Hello, Mimi. How you doing? How's the family?
I'm good, thank you very much. Yeah, no, my family are good. It's only my husband and I actually at home. It's quite nice. We've had not bad lockdown. Tim was he got the coronavirus actually, so he was not well for 3 weeks.
Oh,
yeah, no, not very nice. So thankfully, he didn't have to go to hospital. He was quite close to it, but it took him another 3 weeks to then get over the illness. So yeah, not nice.
is he recovered now? Is he all...
He has recovered now. Yeah, he has. But it took him a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of, and he said he's never felt in so much pain in his entire life. I mean, everything ached, and of course, then you get the breathing, then you get the kidneys, and I mean everything else that they're now discovering that you get with it. He had. So, but anyway, he's thankfully one of the lucky ones. He's all right.
And did you manage to get it, or do you not know? Or
well, I don't know. I haven't had it confirmed. He's had a test and things, so they know that he's had it. But no, I mean, I felt ill for about 3 or 4 days, but nothing like Tim. I mean, I was worried because I'm an asthmatic, so I thought, oh God. Yeah, but no, compared to him, no, he was furious actually. He said, well, not furious that I didn't get it. He said, how come every time? He said, you just sail through these illnesses. I went, I don't know. So perhaps I haven't had it. I don't know.
Well, you may have just carried it. This is the weird thing about it. Nobody actually knows half who's had it, who hasn't, and some people have got away with it, some people haven't. It's bizarre. So normally I would get my guest to give a little introduction about themselves. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is go through some of your achievements, just in case there is a listener who does not know who you are, and I'll be very surprised if they don't. So obviously I'm taking this off your website, although I know there's more that you've done. That's actually on here, but we'll go through what's on your website, and then I might add some of the stuff extra on top of that as well. So in 2007, you were the overall winner and course record holder of the 6633 Extreme Ultra Marathon, which is a race non-stop, 352 miles across the Arctic. And you did it in 143 hours and 23 minutes. You were the female record holder in 2008 for the John O'Groats to Land's End. It's not long been surpassed.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah, it was quite recent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But up until then, you were holding that record for the fastest woman to run for John O'Groats to Land's End in 12 days and 15 hours and 46 minutes, about 140 odd miles. Most people know John O'Groats to Land's End, so they'll be able to start comprehending how big a deal that is. You did the double comrades in 2009, first female and the fourth person ever to achieve that. Comrades is one of the greatest, legendary, iconic ultra marathons that we ever know over in South Africa.
Yeah.
And they do it one way. one year and then they do it the other way. But you decide to do it but both anyway. Grand Union Canal in 2010, 145-mile non-stop race in under 45 hours. You managed it in a new course record of 28 hours and 12 minutes. The Zambian Desert Challenge in 2010, overall winner. That's a 5-day staged race over 220 kilometers. The Double Badwater in 2011, female course record holder for that, 292 miles.
Well, that was just breaking well, it wasn't a course record as such. I was breaking. There are lots of people who do sort of the doubles, so I was just trying to break the sort of the fastest female crossing at the time.
Yeah,
so
which you did in 108 hours, 10 minutes. Spartathlon in 2011, which you then went on to do a double Spartathlon a few years later, if I remember rightly.
I did, yes.
Yeah, I remember tracking you all the way on the tracker, both directions for that one. You were the third female and first Brit home in 2011. Spartathlon is one of the hardest races to qualify for, so that's just showing you how good that achievement is. Overall world record for M to M, which is the top of Ireland to the bottom of Ireland, 345 miles, 2012, 3 days, 15 hours and 36 minutes. The Viking Way, 146 miles non-stop, third overall female finisher, the only female finisher today. We're still going here, ladies and gentlemen. You won the Female Performance of the Year in 2012, awarded by the UK Ultra Running Awards for the fastest crossing of Ireland. Double Grand Union Canal in 2013. So what you did previously, but double that. A Cyprus Ultra, the only finisher, and new course record in 135 miles in 2014. Freedom Runner 2014, 1,968 kilometers. I can't pronounce that. Where is it?
Pietermaritzburg. So across South Africa, basically.
Yeah, over 32 days. And then you start going into your cycling and everything else, which we'll touch on later on. But that's just going through that. Even to me, I've done what I think I've done some amazing things. So that list is just unbelievable. You just read it and you just think, wow. The whole podcast is adventures, basically what our feet have taken us on. And if they could talk, what do you reckon? It's not part of my question I've laid down, but what do you reckon your feet would say to you now? After going back then, what would your feet say to you after doing all that? What do you reckon?
They'd probably kill me, actually, having put them through all of that. If you tot up all the miles, I think they've had a great adventure, my feet. They've been all over the world, through mud, through rain, through rivers, dry, hot, cold deserts. I mean, who wouldn't be happy?
Definitely. I mean, I've known, obviously, I've followed you for quite a few years, and you've run in the jungle, you've run across ice, you've run across deserts, you've run, obviously, in various countries like India and stuff like that. Your feet haven't stopped really up until recently. So your adventures are amazing, and it's been I just can't get over following those journeys that I've had the fortunate to follow you with. But if we scroll back all those years to when you were a child, were you a sporty child growing up? Where are you from originally?
Well, my father was in the army. So I was born in Singapore, actually. And nice. Apparently, according to my mother, I could swim before I could walk, which, considering now I have this sort of fear of water, you'd never know. I used to sit in the bottom of rivers and just play with pebbles and things. But yeah, was I sporty? I was at school. Yeah, I used to ride a bike as a child. And we used to do camping holidays and stuff, and we skied. We did Langlad things, cross-country skiing. And then at school, I was quite sporty. I was in the team sports at school, so I played hockey and netball and rounders and that sort of thing. We didn't have athletics at my school. I'm a bit too old for that. I think it appeared the year that I left, which was a bit upsetting. But I loved team sports. I didn't really know anything about running. I didn't follow running. I didn't know anything about marathons or half marathons or anything like that at all.
It was just
So
something you did as part of the sports that you were involved in, running around.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it was a team thing, and so you're sort of very different, very different. So you spend however long on the pitch, and then you go off again. But yeah, I love that. I was team captains and things, so I did enjoy that bit.
Okay, so obviously when you left school, where did you go from there?
We were based in Edinburgh at the time, and so I went to college. I decided I went to an all-girls school, which I loved. And so when I left school, I'm a bit of a rebel, really. I'm a bit naughty. I discovered boys, and I just wanted to enjoy myself. And I took up smoking when I was, I mean, not very much, but when I was 17, I think, I had a cigarette outside the school window in my top dorm, feeling very naughty. And I actually enjoyed it, which was the worst possible thing to do. So after leaving school, really, I partied, I drank quite a lot, I smoked cigarettes, and I had a fantastic time. Exercise didn't even come into my world at all. Not at all. Didn't exist.
So you had a standard childhood, basically, in your later teens, and I think most people of teenage years and upwards, once they've, especially with young boys, young men, once they've discovered beer and females, whatever sporting activity they were doing, most go off and enjoy themselves. It's the very few that have pushy parents that continue along on their sporting prowess, I would say. And then after school, did you start work, and what did you...
So I was doing a medical secretarial course, which I left after a year, actually. And my father said, they had a flat in Edinburgh, which I rented, or that I lived in. And my father, who's very strict, said, right, you've got a month to find a job. And if you don't find a job, then you have to come home. And I thought, oh no, I mean, I love my parents, but I just didn't want to go back and live at home again. So I found a job within 2 weeks. I started working at a firm of architects as just a receptionist, and then moved up from there and became sort of PA and did that sort of thing. So I then moved to London a couple of years later with Tim, and I then worked for, I can't remember who I worked for, a firm of solicitors. And then Tim and I got married, and then I got pregnant. So I had my first child when I was 23.
So you had your first...
I think...
Sorry, carry on.
But no. I think Tim, so my first child, Emma, was born a year after, actually. And so I think my husband was hoping that I would go back to work. And I had planned to go back to work because I didn't feel remotely maternal at all, actually. So I thought, oh, don't worry about me, I'll go back to work. Well, of course, as soon as I had the baby, I just didn't want to go back to work at all, actually. So I was very lucky. I didn't have to go back to work, but I did find stuff that I could do at home to earn some money. So I used to make people's wedding dresses and evening dresses and things like that. So I did that for about 15 years.
And Tim was in the army at this point, was he?
No, he had left the army. So we came to London because he did his resettlement course in London. Yeah, so he was ex-army at that stage.
So you obviously you've had your children and the years of tickle boy. When did you start finding your love for moving faster on 2 feet?
Well, I think it started really when I was pregnant with Emma. I went swimming. Well, I say swimming. I'd literally get in the water and do breaststroke because I couldn't put my face underneath the water. So I would do breaststroke, with my head firmly above the water, really slowly. So you can't exactly call it exercise at all. And I looked like a beach whale, actually, with my eldest daughter. It's very depressing. And then after I had Emma, I then started going to the gym because I think, again, it was quite a good way. I needed to get back to, I had an eating disorder before I was pregnant with Emma, which hadn't completely disappeared. So it resurfaced again once I'd had her. So for me, I needed to get back into shape. So I started going to the gym. and again, I didn't do any running in the gym. I did a lot of classes. You know, you had step classes and leotards and things in those days. So that's what I did there. And then it wasn't until after I'd had, it was number 3, so Harry. So once my third child was born, and well, actually in sort of a few years old, that's when I discovered running. I sort of, I'd never liked the shape of my legs. Again, this all goes back to childhood. So it doesn't matter how fat or thin I become, I just don't like the shape of my legs. You know, how some people want to have long hair or blue eyes or whatever. I just wanted nice thin legs. And so somebody suggested that running was the way forward. So I went to the gym, and that was it. Stood on a treadmill for the very first time, and that was the beginning of my running career.
How old were you then at this point in time?
36.
So, like me, you started pretty late into life and finding the love for running. And how was that first few steps for you? Can you?
Oh, terrifying. Oh, it sounds really silly, isn't it? But you know, when you get on the treadmill, you think it's like anything, isn't it? You think that everybody's watching you. In fact, nobody is remotely interested in what you're doing. You know, they just think you know what you're doing, so they're not watching you at all. But I was convinced that I was going to fall off the back of the treadmill or make a complete fool of myself. But I didn't know anything about the process of running. I mean, yes, you can run for a bus or run for something or run around with the kids, but the processes of running, I didn't know anything about it. So I thought, okay, I'll start with mixture of running and walking, because we didn't have the internet like we do now. You know, now you can just Google something and you can get a program. We had nothing like that all those years ago. So I literally just started running and walking and set myself a goal of being able to run for 1 mile. You know, that could have been 100 miles at the time. So when I achieved that, oh, I tell you, I was so pleased. I mean, I was so pleased with myself. And then I set myself a goal of being able to run for 3 miles. And I think in the army, isn't it right? You have a test in the army. I can't remember what it's called now, when you're wearing a full kit and you have to be able to run 3 miles in a certain amount of time. Is it 24 minutes or something? Yeah. So I think I set myself that time. I mean, I didn't have the pack on, I might add, but I thought, right, I'm going to set myself that time. That's what I'm going to achieve. Because I quite liked goals, because if I didn't have a goal or something, I used to slightly drift. So I achieved that, and everybody in the gym knew about it. You know, I was ecstatic that
Were you running around high-fiving everyone?
Oh, I was just, yes! You know, I think I was
woman. You're like, yeah!
I was so red in the face, and you know, I just couldn't breathe. I mean, but you know, it didn't matter what I looked like. It was such a lovely feeling. And then from there, that I met these 3 women or 2 women in the gym who had gone running, and they said, "Look, come on, Mimi, we're going outside, and you know, next week we're going to go and do a 10-mile run along the Cuckoo Trail, which is in East Sussex. Not that far from me, but it's flat." It's a disused railway line. And they said, well, we're going to do 10 miles. Why don't you come and join us? And I thought, God, 10 miles? You know, I'd only run 3 miles, for goodness sake. 10 seemed like an awful lot of, you know, quite a big distance step up. Anyway, I went, and, you know, complete revelation, because I'd never run outside. I'd only ever run on the treadmill. I actually didn't realize people ran outside. I mean, that's, you know, because again, back then you didn't see loads of people running. And I lived in the country, so I was going to see even fewer people really running. But I loved it, absolutely loved it. It was like, you know, I said before, it was like being given a pair of wings and I could fly. And it was that feeling of just total elation, really. I think you sort of take yourself out of yourself, if you see what I mean. And, you know, you can forget about your worries, you can sort stuff out, and you can just, it was me time. And it was really lovely to enjoy, and I loved it, enjoy it. I just always just remember that last mile when I just picked up the pace. I had no idea what pace I was going. I didn't have watches and things. And I just ran. And when I finished, I felt fantastic. I mean, I couldn't walk the next day, but I felt fantastic at that moment. You know, that was my freedom.
So at that point, obviously you touched that you had an eating disorder. did you find that running was now starting to help as a coping mechanism with your mental health on this side of things?
Well, my sort of eating disorder, I'd sort of got rid of. You never totally get rid of eating disorders. I mean, you manage them, but I think a little bit of them always stays with you. So I had actually got help for that when my son was 18 months old, because again, through each pregnancy, I was managed to not have an eating disorder, because I had to think about the baby, not about myself. And that I did find that quite difficult, but I managed it. So I had 3 very healthy, quite large babies actually. But as soon as the babies were born, that was it. Poof, back to being me again. So the cycle would restart. So I remember after my second child, I just thought, I can't keep on doing this for the rest of my life, behaving in this way, because it's not fair on the children when they're, older, to think that it's normal for mummy to, push the food round her plate or disappear to go and be sick or, whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't want that for my children. So I ended up going to St George's Hospital, outpatients, for quite a long time. It took a long time to get seen in the first place, even then. And I was within walking distance of St George's, and I was under somebody called Professor Lacey, who's sadly since died. But they were very good. But unfortunately, the outpatients system didn't work for me. So I was still losing weight at this stage. And so they said, right, you've got to go into hospital. And I went and looked around an eating disorder unit, and they're terrifying, absolutely terrifying places. And it's so sad to see, the people in there. I mean, what amazing, extraordinary people, but they're incredibly ill. And I remember going to talk to one of the girls there. She was in a room. So when you arrive, you're put into, you're in a room on your own. The rooms have got bars on, so you can't open the window and throw out your food. If you want to go to the loo, you have to be put in a wheelchair. Everything is you're very confined. And you stay in that room. I mean, you're allowed to, I think you go out for various activities and things, but you basically stay in that room, no form of exercise at all, until you put your target weight on and you keep your weight on. I don't know whether things have changed. They might well have done, but that's what they did. And so I remember talking to this girl who was about to come out of her room and go into the main sort of bit of the hospital, because she had maintained her target weight for a certain amount of time. And I just said to her, I said, really good, you've done so well, but I said, you're so thin still. And she looked at me and she said, have you looked at yourself? And it was the first time, I think, really, that I had ever thought of myself as being thin. I mean, I thought she was painfully thin still, and yet I was thinner than she was.
Yeah.
Which was pretty scary, actually. Anyway, I ended up not going into the hospital. I ended up, I couldn't face it, actually. It was quite difficult with 2 children. So I went through, I was hypnotized. I went to a professional hypnotist 3 times or twice a week for a year. So it drags up all your past and why you do what you do in the first place. There's another form of therapy. So I discovered why I had got my eating disorder and everything. And so, so I now have a very different relationship with food. But I think what running has taught me is that actually food isn't there as it's not something to be frightened of. It's, it is there as a fuel. It's a bit like, when you have a car, if you want to go from A to B, you've got to put petrol in it. If I want to race, I've got to put fuel in the tank. Otherwise, I'm not going to get to the end of that finish line. I might, but I'm not going to get there in the best possible form. And I'll be very ill. And I just, so you have to eat. So I have a very different relationship with food now.
Well, obviously you've managed to keep yourself going through the running at this point, and you've moved on. But what made you think, I know, I'm going to step into the world of long distance. I'm going to toe the line and do, the Marathon des Sables as you've done and various other ultras. What was it that was like, I'm going to go a bit further than most people?
Well, I think it was Well, it was an adventure, wasn't it? You know, bear in mind at this stage, so when we did the Marathon des Sables, I'd been running for 18 months at that stage. And I think I had a friend of mine, I seemed quite normal at the time. And a friend of mine I had nothing to compare it to, you see. So I think it was my sort of normal, I suppose. But we'd done half a marathon and a few other bits and pieces. But the furthest I had run was a half marathon. And this friend, literally, one of the girls that I ran with, came into the gym one day and she handed me this magazine and she just said, "Mimi, this is our next race." And I just looked at it and it was pictures of people in the desert and, you know, blistered feet. And I just, oh my God, that looks fantastic, doesn't it? So I didn't think about the distance, didn't think about the heat. So I just thought, what an adventure that was going to be. You know, it was so far away from my world as a mum with 3 kids that I just wanted to go and do it. I didn't know whether I could, but I wanted to go and do it and give it a go.
A little bit of adventure away from your normality at home, finding whether it was the desert.
Yeah, but it was an opportunity and of course, again, then we didn't know about. There were very few races in the UK at that stage that were long distance. You know, the ultra running world didn't exist in any way like it does now. You know, it was tiny, and even the MDS, we had to apply through the post. When I did Badwater, I had to apply for Badwater through the postal system. You know, now it's all done on the internet. But yeah, so I think for me, it could have been any adventure, but it just happened to be the MDS. And and when I finished that, and I was quite ill when I did that, but when I finished it, I just thought, you know, if I was that ill, you know, imagine I just finished a race that was billed to be the toughest foot race on earth. I mean, you know, we all know that there are some others that are much harder, but you know, it's all relative, isn't it? But at the time, it was billed to be the toughest foot race on earth. And I just thought, you know, if I can finish a race like that, feeling that ill and being that ill, imagine what I can do if I'm feeling, you know, 100%. Yeah. So that's why I then continued. It just seemed to be. I think my husband thought I was going to stop at that stage.
So, obviously, you found your love now for endurance running. What was for these events? You know, whether you're doing double Spartathlon or just a normal Spartathlon. What was your training regime like? What was, you know, what were you doing week on, week out?
Well, it did vary depending on what I was doing. So something like the Spartathlon, I would do, I mean, I don't do really high mileage. Some people do very high mileage. I sort of don't. But, you know, I would do the speed work. I'd have a route, which was a 10-mile route from my house. And once a month, I would do that to sort of to test my pace. And once I got it to a certain sort of time, I remember finishing it going, yes, now I'm ready for the Spartathlons, you know, because I can now do that. So I would do much faster stuff. So go out and do a marathon, but try and sort of pace it and do, you know, I'd still do all the hill work because of course Spartathlon's very hilly. So I would have my 2 longer runs that I would always do. I tended to do those during the week because the weekends were sort of family time or time with my husband. And I always had 1 day off every single time. I didn't really do many weights and stuff in those days. So I didn't really do a huge amount of that. But no, I think my training was probably very similar to other people's. But I did... It was just getting the pace right. I'm not a naturally fast runner, I think. You know, I quite happily sort of plodding along. So it was getting the pace, you know, doing 10Ks and doing speed sessions and things like that to get my pace up and hill reps and things.
Yeah, so you're not naturally a fast runner, but you have to be pretty quick to qualify for Spartathlon. It's, you know, you have to qualify to enter. It's not one of these races you can just pay online and just give it a go. So you have to be reasonably good.
No, absolutely. So, yeah, you do, but I don't do a lot of marathons because I just find that I've done about 6 marathons. And I remember meeting John Foden in, I think, 2004 or something. And he said to me, Mimi, you use the guy who set up the Spartathlon. And he said, Mimi, you've got to do the Spartathlon. I went, John, no, forget it. Absolutely forget it. It's way too fast for me. I just can't do it. Anyway, all those years later, I thought, if I don't get on with it now and do it, I think it's much harder to enter now, to be fair, but I'm going to be too old. I certainly won't be able to get any speed up. And I loved it. It's one of those races when you come into the finish line, you're running towards the statue, and you run up the steps and you kiss the feet of the king, and you just, and that's the end of the race. It's just the most fantastic finish. The streets are lined with other competitors who finished, and they're cheering you, and got drinks in their hand, and it's just the most spectacular finish to any race.
I think when we eventually get them back, it's going to be a different type of finish. So they'll be wiping it first, with Dettol before anyone kisses these feet and rocks at the end of races. So, do you have any advice for people that are already running and they fancy, I fancy doing something slightly different, like you did, doing, running from Ireland north to south, double Spartathlons, double Badwaters. Most people just do one. Do you have any advice out for people that are thinking, I don't know whether to give it a go or not?
Well, I think, for something like Ireland, or let's say you want to go and do an adventure, yes, go for it. If you're going for a record, then I think obviously you've got to get the experience of doing that sort of distance, and the experiences of doing sort of multi-day and things anyway. So that's different. But if you want to go and have an adventure and run from the top to bottom of Ireland, or run across South Africa, or whatever it might be, you can do it. Perhaps have that as your end goal, but over the next few years to build up and have a few events building up to that, which are your sort of B's and C's, which are then all in preparation for the bigger goal. But no, have that big goal, and just break it up into chunks along the way, so that, which is part of your training. And, we are capable of doing a lot more than we think we are. People get scared about thinking, not scared, but they might get apprehensive if you say, but that's 200 and something miles. Yeah, but break that down. You're not going for a record here. Break it down into more realistic chunks of what you personally think you're going to achieve. And it's a journey. You put one foot in front of the other, and you're having a fantastic journey until you finish, and it's the experience of that whole thing. It doesn't have to be a race. It can be a journey, which is what America was. Not America, South Africa was for me. That was a journey. And that was just fantastic,
Yeah, you've got to also have that sort of feeling of not to be worried about failing either. I think some people may be a bit too scared of, I'll fail, I'll let people down and all this sort of stuff, and maybe that puts them off. But you enter a race, you do anything in life, we're all going to fail at some. I mean, I've had 2 epic failures. You are going to fail at some stage. And failure is absolutely fine. I mean, if you haven't trained for things and, whatever, actually, then that's your own fault. But you'll know that, and if you fail at something, you go away. Yes, you're going to feel a bit despondent and a bit, sad. That's natural. But actually go away and think about it and think, okay, why did I fail? Well, I failed because I didn't eat properly, or I didn't train properly, or actually I had a bit of an injury, which I shouldn't really have started in the first place, or just find out why it is that you failed in the first place and turn it into a positive and go back, and you'll go back much stronger. So each time you fail, it makes you much stronger. So obviously times have moved on now. You're no longer doing extreme long runs. You are still running shorter runs, but you've moved into
very little bits.
You've moved into new pastures of swimming and cycling. How was that first swim for you?
Horrid. Oh yeah, I've just done it in my book actually. No, terrifying. So I put it out there on I've had this fear of water for many, many years. And it's a deep-rooted fear of water. So, I mean, I'll get into water. So I'll get into a swimming pool. I don't have a problem with that. I can't stand putting my face in the water and things, which is why I swim breaststroke like that. I'll go into the sea, but I can't go out of my depths. I don't particularly like going out of my depths, and I cannot stand any fast-flowing water or anything like that. You know, when I'm out of my depth, absolutely just, I think I'm going to be sort of taken away somewhere. So I put it out there after I got back from America that I was going to learn how to swim, how to overcome this fear. So Kevin, my lovely swim coach, he contacted me. He said, Mimi, I'll teach you how to swim. So my first lesson, okay, I turned up with a bikini on because I didn't have a swimming costume. I mean, honestly, I'm a right one on. So I didn't have a swimming hat, and I've got hair that just flops everywhere. You know, it's not exactly something you can tie back and it doesn't come back. But I did have a pair of goggles. I was quite proud of myself because I did have a pair of goggles. And I remember arriving at the pool, really, really nervous. And I got into the pool at the shallow end, and Kevin said, right, come on, you show me what you can do. I went, oh, no. I can't do anything. And I explained my story to him. Anyway, so the first lesson was blowing bubbles in the water. You know, literally putting my face in the water and blowing bubbles. And the first time I had to put my face in, I sort of I came up, and it was just that sort of, whew, can't do it. Anyway, by the end of the lesson, I was putting my face in and I was blowing bubbles because I knew that the edge was just there. You know, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't drown. So I didn't like it, but I did it. And then the next few lessons were doing something called sink downs. Now, I don't know if anybody is familiar with the sink downs, but we started in the middle of the pool, you know, so the middle, not deep end, but so the middle bit, where you have to basically sort of take a breath underwater. And as you go underwater, you have to blow your breath out. So you sink to the bottom. Not me. Kevin does it. He just sinks like a rock. Me, I do it and the whole body rotates. My bottom goes up in the air. I'm still blowing out at this stage. I'm still not sinking. And eventually, I have to come up because I can't breathe. And I got the hang of those, but I was still not good at them. You know, some people, I think I'm just buoyant. Must be, got a buoyant body or something. So, but yeah, I can now swim. I can do it, but I still get anxious about the breathing. I mean, I can do the bilateral breathing and I can do that, but I'm not totally relaxed with it. You know, that's after 2 years, for goodness sake. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, it's not natural for everyone. You know, running is natural for humans because that's how we evolved. But swimming is not. It's something we've had to learn. It's not naturally installed into our bodies. So, you know, some people take longer than others to learn a new skill. And you've gone into cycling and doing your triathlons. Do you feel that's now sort of helped you with the process of not being able to run endurance anymore?
Yeah, I think it has actually. When I came back from America, I did find that very, very difficult. I felt that a large chunk of me was missing because, you know, 20 years of my life had been about running, and suddenly I didn't have that anymore. And I actually at that stage didn't know whether I could run again. I mean, I could barely walk at that stage. I was in, you know, so much pain on a sort of day-to-day basis. So yeah, I was in a pretty dark place. I mean, I've been very lucky. I've never, apart from my eating disorder, I haven't had any mental health issues or anxiety issues or depression. I have been very lucky, but this really, I had to go through, I suppose, a bit like a grieving process with it. And I did find myself going into this deep, dark hole, actually, which was pretty scary. And I eventually I did have to have a good old talking to myself, and just to say, Mimi, come on, you've got to pull yourself together here, because it's not only going to impact you, it's going to impact your whole family, you know, if you do this. So I spoke to Mark Cobain, you know, madman who does all the Viking Way and all that sort of thing. And anyway, he suggested that I did Ride Across Britain, which is Land's End to John O'Groats, because it was at that stage, it was the 10th anniversary of my world record. but it would be the other way round. So I would have cycled north to south, and no, run north to south and then cycle up. So I signed up for it. Didn't even have a road bike at that stage. I think at that stage I'd been cycling. I had a hybrid bike, and I think the furthest I'd done at that stage was 10 miles. That was it, because again, I had to build up my legs and stuff. I wasn't allowed to do a huge amount of outdoor stuff. So in the January, I actually bought a bike, and which was terrifying. Road bikes. I mean, they've got such thin tires, haven't they? And these. Anyway, but I had to learn to take my hand off the handlebars without falling off, and watch out for potholes and watch out for traffic. But slowly, actually, I loved RAB. RAB Across Britain was just absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it, because again, it wasn't a race. It was all about the journey. It was the experience, and you're cycling 100 miles plus a day. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And so that's so my cycling, I've got more confidence. I'm better at it now, and it's taken me on some quite nice adventures as well. So I've been quite lucky.
So although the running adventures with your feet maybe not the same anymore, your cycling and your swimming, your feet have now got new adventures, which although you've done John O'Groats to Land's End, be it the other way, it was a completely different adventure. It wasn't the same as running. So, it's nice.
And I think,
it's nice.
Well, I think it's nice. And and also, I mean, I'm very lucky. I think sometimes it's very difficult, isn't it? It's the classic, sort of saying, when one door closes, another one opens. Sometimes you have to look a little bit harder for the one to open up again, but it's always there waiting for you. And my feet having a great time now. They're a bit more relaxed, and I would never have done the Pacific Coast Highway had I not been, if I'd continued to run, I would never have experienced cycling the Pacific Coast Highway. I would never have gone open water swimming. I wouldn't have done any of that. So, again, my running days in terms of long distance are definitely sort of over, but I'm having other adventures. Absolutely. And I'm very lucky.
Okay, so now I've got a question for my wife. When I said, I've got Mimi coming on, she was like, that is. She has a question for you. And this is it. Do you feel that there is still a bias towards males being seen as runners and women as joggers? And have you experienced any discrimination or prejudice being a female runner in your time?
Oh, that's a difficult question, isn't it? I think in the ultra running world, I haven't had, from runners themselves, I haven't had any form of discrimination or, made to feel like a jogger. Definitely not. I think amongst my male friends, when I first started running, I was definitely given a bit of a hard time because I had 3 children, and how could I go off for 10 days and leave my 3 children at home? They were very well looked after. They would never have said that to my husband when he goes off fishing for 10 days. You know what I mean? It's sort of, or people would say to me, when are you giving up running, Mimi? And I'd want to say, well, when are you going to give up golf? Or when are you going to give up, tennis or whatever? So things like that sort of happen. I think, we have got some extraordinary female ultra runners.
We have indeed.
Around now, and the UK, we've got some great ones. So we're fighting back, and I really think that in the ultra running world, I don't feel that there's any, we're not classified as joggers.
No.
At all. I think we might be with people who are not runners, but I think in our world, no, I don't think we are at all.
Yeah, and you sort of hit it on the head when it came to the ultra running community, because we have females winning overall, like yourself, Nikki Spinks, Jasmine Paris, Beth Pascal. Those runners are now literally changing the way females are seen in the running world. There may be a big difference in athletics, between, you know, the female 100-meter runners and the male 100-meter runners. But when it comes to endurance, there's not a lot of difference anymore between the two.
Not on the long stuff. Yeah. Yeah. On the really long stuff and the sort of expedition type sort of events. No. And actually, it's not about, I think sometimes, you know, we sort of say male and female, you know, but actually, you know, people like Jasmine Paris and they're very good athletes. Doesn't matter whether she's a male or female, she's a very good athlete.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes people forget. It doesn't matter whether she's male or female, she's a good athlete. And she did that race incredibly well. So that's what we've got to remember.
Okay. Obviously, once races and events are back on, whatever form they take of normality, is there anything in the pipeline for you?
No. Oh, actually, no. Yes. Well, in theory, although I'm hoping they're going to cancel, has to be said. I'm supposed to be doing I was thrilled when swimming pools were closed. I'm supposed to be doing the Serpentine 2-mile swim to get my big medal.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've done the bike ride, I've done the marathon, so I just got to do the swim. So that's the only thing that I've got lined up, because I had all my stuff actually was up until June and I hadn't signed up for anything else. So all my stuff has sort of gone. But I'm hoping to do a big something next year. So that'll be a more an expedition type event. So, but we're trying to sort of organise it. But until the world is slightly more normal, we can't really start organising or doing anything because it's a bit difficult at the moment. But we shall see.
Achievements that we've gone through. Which one means the most to you out of all of them, and why?
Oh, it's so difficult.
They are when they're all special in some sort. But there's got to be one that's just at the top.
Yeah. Well, I think. Well, you see, I love my Arctic race. That was very, very special. I mean, that was very special. I think for me, one of my the Spartathlon. You see, I was very proud of the Spartathlon. I didn't expect to come third female. But I think also, yeah, so that's got to be right up there. It's very difficult thinking about which ones it's very, very special. But the one so my world record from top to bottom of Ireland is one of those events where I don't think I could have done any better. You know, when you walk away from a race or something and you just think, do you know something, I left it out there, couldn't have done any more. And for me, Ireland was that. And so, yeah, I mean, I set myself a goal of doing it in 3.5 days. I did it in 3 days, 15 hours. So I didn't quite do it in 3.5 days, but I don't think I couldn't have physically done it any quicker. And I was pretty pleased with that. Yeah.
We have a lot of
3 really.
We have a lot of beginners starting out now, and lockdown runners, as we like to call them, because they've taken it up because they're not working, what have you, or for fitness. What would be your main tips and advice for them?
Well, I think always I think the first thing is to enjoy what you're doing. Listen to your body. Very important. You know, I think people, they start running. You know, I know as an example, you know, my sister who, you know, started running, and she was running before lockdown, but she then stopped, and then so she started again. She said, right, I'm going to do X amount every single day. And I said, well, if you say you're going to do that every single day, I said, that's a big ask to do it every single day. So I think be sensible about your goals. You know, perhaps go out 3 times a week, possibly 4 times a week. It doesn't really matter, but be realistic. Build it up nice and slowly. Enjoy the process. Keep yourself fit. It's being consistent, really. And then when we come out of lockdown, you might think, right, now I'm going to go and do a park run, or I'm going to go and do this, you know. So it's listening to your body, being sensible, and yeah, enjoying it. I think for me, it's all about going out and enjoying it. It doesn't matter about speed or anything like that at the moment. It's just going out and just putting one foot in front of the other and just really loving it.
Right, we're going to finish off with 10 quick fire questions now. Well, as quick as we could possibly get it to. Okay. If there was, right, so the first one, if you could run again, right, endurance wise, in the ice, the jungle, or the desert, which one would you go and do again?
The desert.
Okay.
Do I have to give you a race that I would do?
No, just one.
No,
that's fine. Question number 2: your favourite food you like to snack on during a long race or run?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Baby bells.
Your favourite country you've ever run in?
South Africa.
If pink couldn't be your favourite colour anymore, what other colour would it be?
A turquoisey blue.
Like the top you've got on now.
I know, you see?
Yeah. Who cooks in your house, you or your hubby?
Oh, me, definitely.
Okay. What's your current favourite brand of running shoe?
I've always done Hoka's.
Okay. Is there an athlete that inspires you to keep pushing yourself, keep going, doing whatever you want to do?
No, there isn't a particular one. So I just love, at the moment now, I just love following and just seeing all the amazing things that other people are doing and what they're doing. And yeah, I'm in total awe of anybody actually at the moment. It's lovely.
Okay. If you could run with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would you like to go for a run with?
Oh, my dad, actually.
Nice. What's your favourite post-race meal? So when you've finished your running and you want to scoff loads of food down, what was your favourite meal?
Oh, shepherd's pie and peas. Oh, yes. Love it.
And last question, road or trail running, which was your preferred?
I was better at road.
Okay.
I prefer trail, but I'm better at road.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end, Mimi. It's been an absolute pleasure. If people want to follow you and check out your new adventures, where can they find you?
Mostly, well, I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. So there's Marvelous Mimi, and I'm on Facebook. So I'm everywhere. I haven't managed to do TikTok yet. Yes, it's far too complicated.
You have a book already out, and you're currently writing one. Is your book that's out still available?
Oh yeah, it is. But at the moment, I think Amazon apparently have run out of stock. I think due to the virus, obviously. And so, but I do have copies. So if you need or would like to have a copy, you can contact me, and I can get it to you.
Well, thank you very
Beyond
much.
impossible. It's very good.
Thank you very much for letting me catch up with you and listening to your adventures. I've been a long time fan of yours. You're one of my biggest inspirations, along with quite a few female runners. So thank you for allowing me to have this privilege of interviewing you. I'm going to pause the recording and we'll have a quick finish chat afterwards. But thank you very much, Mimi. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you very much for having me.
So that was Mimi Anderson. Absolutely loved making that podcast with her. Love her to bits. Fabulous woman. Fantastic runner. And now into her cycling and swimming as well. Go check her out. Follow her. Buy her book. For me, she's one of the biggest inspirations I have in my life. And I hope that she becomes inspiration to others. If you liked what you heard or watched, depending on how you viewed and listened to this, please give us a subscribe, a like, a review on the podcast streams, YouTube, all those. All right, come follow me. I'm on pretty much everything. Let me know what you think. Until next time on If My Feet Could Talk.